When a guy starts pulling away, the first thing we often ask ourselves is, what did I do wrong? We replay conversations, overthink texts, and analyze moments that might have shifted the dynamic. But here's what most people don't realize. When he's pulling away, it's not always because of something you did. It's not even always about you. Often, it's about him trying to avoid the conversation he knows is coming. Now, think about this. Breakups are uncomfortable for anyone, even the person initiating it, especially the person initiating it, because there's this internal conflict, the desire to leave versus the desire not to hurt someone they once cared about, maybe still care about, but don't feel deeply connected to anymore. And when someone isn't ready to have that difficult conversation, they do something else instead. They avoid, they create space. They hope that by stepping back, by going quiet, by becoming distant, they won't have to say the words out loud. They hope the relationship might just dissolve quietly without any big confrontation. So if you're sitting there wondering why his energy suddenly shifted, why he's texting less, calling less, making fewer plans, it could be because he's already thinking about ending things, but doesn't know how to bring it up. It's easier in his mind to slowly back away than to look you in the eye and tell you he doesn't feel the same anymore. And here's the part that stings. Sometimes he's hoping you'll bring it up first. Because if you bring it up, if you say, hey, something's off, or are you even into this anymore? Then he doesn't have to initiate the difficult conversation. You do. Why does this happen? Because many people, not just men, are deeply conflict averse. The idea of making someone cry, of disappointing them, of facing their hurt, it's heavy. And rather than stepping up and having the tough talk, they opt for silence. They convince themselves that slowly retreating is somehow kinder. That maybe if they just fade out gently, the breakup won't hurt as much. But the truth is, it does hurt. It hurts more, actually, because silence breeds confusion. It leaves you in emotional limbo, clinging to hope where there isn't any, wondering if things will go back to the way they were. It's not closure. It's emotional starvation. When someone wants to break up, but they don't say it directly, their behavior changes before their words do. They stop checking in like they used to. They don't initiate plans. You start to feel like you're chasing them, trying to fix something, when you're not even sure what's broken. That's not fair to you. You deserve to be with someone who's clear, who shows up, who communicates, even when it's hard, is the truth a lot of people need to hear. Silence is a form of communication. Avoidance is a message. And if someone is consistently withdrawing, if they're no longer engaged, if they're no longer showing effort, it's already telling you something important, even if they haven't said it out loud yet. You don't need to wait for a formal breakup to start honoring what you don't need to wait for him to spell it out for you to recognize that you're being emotionally sidelined. I know it's tempting to fill in the silence, to text more, to ask if everything's okay, to try harder to win him back. But the more you overcompensate, the more power you give to the dynamic that's already becoming unbalanced. Relationships don't thrive when one person is shrinking away and the other is chasing. They thrive when both people meet each other with effort, honesty, and courage. Sometimes people will start distancing themselves as a test. They want to see if they really want to leave. They're still unsure. But here's what they forget. The person on the other side of that distance is a human being, not a placeholder for their indecision. You're not a test subject for someone figuring out their feelings. You deserve someone who already knows they want to be there. And if someone's unsure, if someone's running from the conversation, that uncertainty is your answer. So many people waste time trying to decode silence, trying to explain it, trying to justify why someone went quiet, why they stopped showing up. But it's not your job to decode someone's silence. It's their job to communicate. And if they don't, then it's your job to protect your peace. The right relationship doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't play hide and seek with emotional presence. A man who truly respects you, even if he's no longer in love with you, will face the discomfort and have the conversation. He won't ghost. He won't slowly disappear. He'll sit you down and he'll say the words. Not because it's easy, but because it's the decent thing to do. And if he doesn't, that speaks volumes too. So if you're noticing that someone is withdrawing emotionally, physically, energetically, don't internalize it as your failure. Don't think it means you weren't enough. Recognize it for what it is. Someone who doesn't have the courage to be upfront. Someone who would rather drift than confront. And instead of holding space for their silence, start creating space for your clarity. Because the truth is, anyone who avoids the conversation they owe you is also avoiding the respect you deserve. You know, something really subtle happens when a guy is thinking about breaking up, but he hasn't said the words yet. It's not like he wakes up one morning and thinks, I'm done. No, it's quieter than that. It creeps in. It shows up in the way he starts comparing the relationship not necessarily to another person, but to some ideal in his head. And that comparison, that's where the slow unraveling begins. You can feel it. You sense something's shifted. The warmth is still there sometimes, but it's inconsistent. One moment, he's laughing with you like old times, and the next, he's distant, distracted. What used to be charming quirks suddenly become minor annoyances. The jokes you used to share, now they fall flat. The things you used to do together, they're suddenly less interesting. Not because they've changed, but because his lens has changed. See, when a guy's emotionally invested, he focuses on what he loves about you. The way you light up when you talk about something you're passionate about. The way you always know how to make him feel better after a rough day. The silly little things you do that make you you. But when he starts mentally checking out, his focus shifts. Suddenly, he's tuned in to the things he used to overlook. The little imperfections that never mattered now feel like reasons to distance himself. It's like he's looking through a magnifying glass, but only at the crack. And here's the thing, those cracks have probably always been there. Every relationship has them. Every person has flaws. But when he's all in, he accepts them. Maybe he even adores them. But when he's starting to emotionally detach, those same flaws become fuel for a story he's writing in his mind. A story that says, this isn't it. This doesn't feel right anymore. Something's missing. That something missing is rarely about you. It's about a feeling he's no longer getting. And because he can't pinpoint it, he starts projecting it onto the relationship. He starts imagining what it would feel like to be somewhere else, with someone else, or even alone. In his mind, he's building a fantasy version of what a relationship should feel like. One where everything clicks, where there's no friction, no doubts, and guess what? No real relationship lives up to that fantasy. But that doesn't stop his mind from going there. And once it does, everything starts to get filtered through that lens. He starts to think, maybe we're too different, or maybe I settled. He questions the connection, the chemistry, the future. And that's when the relationship begins to feel heavier for both of you. You might feel like you're trying harder, putting in more effort, over explaining yourself, over giving, just to bring back the ease that used to be there. What's really going on, though, is that he's already started emotionally exiting. Not in a dramatic way, but in the subtle, quiet ways that build over time. Less engagement, less excitement about future plans, less investment in resolving issues. And you feel like you're chasing something that's just out of reach. This is where a lot of people start doubting themselves. You think, maybe if I just do more, maybe if I just show him how much I care. But the truth is, when someone starts comparing your relationship to an idealized version of love, then no amount of effort can compete with a fantasy, because the fantasy doesn't talk back, it doesn't argue, it doesn't have bad days, it doesn't really do much, it doesn't really get involved. And the more people are inside their limited conception and belief about love, the more it doesn't require emotional labor. So what do you do when this starts happening? You notice the signs without blaming yourself for them. You pay attention to how you feel in the relationship. Do you feel seen, loved, respected? Or are you constantly trying to prove your worth to someone who already has one foot out the door? Sometimes the best thing you can do in that moment is stop chasing, step back, not to punish or play games, but to reclaim your dignity. To say, if you're uncertain, I'm not going to beg you to be sure, because the right relationship isn't built on one person trying to convince the other to stay. It's built on mutual commitment, on choosing each other, not just when it's easy, but when it's real, messy, and imperfect. The irony is, when you step back and hold your ground, one of two things happens. Either he realizes what he's losing and wakes up to the value of what he has, or he continues on his path and you gain clarity faster without losing yourself in the process. Either way, you win, because you're no longer waiting for someone to validate you. You're no longer competing with a fantasy in his mind. You're standing in reality with your self-respect intact. And that's a power no one can take from you. The moment someone starts measuring you against an illusion is the moment you stop shrinking to fit it. You know what's really tough about breakups? It's not always the breakup itself. Sometimes what hurts even more is realizing that he's already halfway out the door, long before you even knew there was a problem. Here's what I mean by that. When a guy is thinking about breaking up, he rarely just wakes up one day and makes that decision out of the blue. It's not sudden for him. It's something that's been brewing quietly, subtly, in the background for days, weeks, sometimes even months. And during that time, while you're still showing up, still texting him goodnight, still making plans for the weekend, he's already grieving the relationship. This is why breakups feel so one-sided sometimes. You're caught off guard, you're still invested, you're still fighting for the connection, and then he says, I think we need to talk. And it all comes crashing down. But to him, it's not crashing. To him, it's the end of a slow internal process. That moment, for him, is the finish line. For you, it's the starting line of your heartbreak. Now I want to talk about this because it's something people rarely say out loud. A lot of women ask, how could he move on so fast? Why does he seem totally fine? Well, I'm in pieces. And the truth is, he's already been mourning the loss of the relationship, emotionally distancing himself bit by bit, while you were still showing up at 100%. You were still in it. He wasn't. And that creates this painful imbalance, because while you're wondering what went wrong, he's already accepted that it's not working. He's already talked himself through the reasons. He's already run through every version of maybe I should stay, and landed on I can't do this anymore. That moment when he tells you, that's not his emotional peak. That's his emotional closure. He's already pictured life without you. He's already thought about the weekends, the texts that stop, the conversations that won't happen. He's already grieved the idea of losing the connection. That's why he seems emotionally muted when it finally ends, because he's had a head start. And I don't say this to justify how it feels. It's awful. It's confusing. It makes you question your worth, your instincts, your ability to trust. But understanding this dynamic gives you power. It gives you clarity. Because now you stop wondering, did he ever love me? Or was any of it real? And you realize it was real. But by the time he broke up with you, he had already processed the ending. His mind had gone through it already. His heart had already practiced letting go. Now, here's the part that stings, and I'm going to be real with you. When someone is emotionally detaching, they don't always tell you, not because they're cruel, but because they're unsure. They don't want to hurt you, and honestly, they don't want to deal with the confrontation yet. So they keep going through the motions. They still reply to texts. They still show up sometimes. They still say, I love you, even if it feels different. And that messes with your intuition because you're sensing something's off, but you keep holding on to the pieces of normalcy, the little gestures that feel like reassurance. You're looking at the surface, but underneath, something's shifting. He's not fully present anymore. His affection is inconsistent. His patience is shorter. He's not fighting with you, but he's not fighting for you either. That's when the grieving has already begun for him. And the worst part, you're still trying. You're still giving your all. You're trying to fix it, to understand it, to hold it together. But he's already let go in ways you can't see. So when he finally says the words, I think we should break up, it's not a decision, it's a conclusion. You hear it as a moment of choice. But for him, it's the last step in a long goodbye. That's why he seems calm. That's why he seems certain. He's not heartless. He's just been living in this decision longer than you have. You're shocked, but he's relieved. And that contrast can feel like a slap in the face. You start asking yourself, was I blind? No, you weren't blind. You were present. You were still in the relationship. He had already started checking out quietly, privately. He didn't involve you in that part of the journey. He went through it alone. And now you're forced to catch up all at once. And that feels deeply unfair because while he had time to emotionally prepare, you're just beginning to process what's happening. But here's what I want you to take away from this. The fact that someone grieved before you did doesn't mean you're less valuable or that your love meant less. It just means they were done emotionally long before they were brave enough to say it. And that's on them, not you. Your value isn't determined by how long someone stayed. It's not measured by their silence or their distance. Your value is in the love you gave even when things got hard, in your willingness to show up when someone else had already walked halfway out the door. And the sooner you stop romanticizing their emotional withdrawal as strength, the sooner you reclaim your own power, because it takes real courage to stay open when things feel shaky. It takes maturity to communicate when things start to feel off. And if someone chooses to end it without giving you the full truth, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their fear. Let them go. Let them grieve the version of you that loved them fully. And while they walk away already processed, you begin your process, not of heartbreak, but of healing, of remembering who you are, of realizing that someone out there will match the level of emotional honesty you gave so freely, because you deserve that. You deserve someone who doesn't grieve the relationship in silence. You deserve someone who fights for it while they're still in it. And the moment you realize that, is the moment you stop asking, why did he leave? And start asking, why would I ever want someone who couldn't even say goodbye with honesty? He tells himself, leaving is a kindness, even if it hurts you. And this is one of the most confusing parts because it doesn't make sense from the outside. How can walking away from someone you say you care about be an act of kindness? But in his head, that's exactly how he justifies it. See, for him, staying in a relationship he's no longer fully invested in begins to feel like a slow betrayal. The longer he stays, the more it feels like lying. And not just to you, to himself too. So he starts rationalizing. He begins thinking, if I stay, I'm stringing her along. If I go, at least I'm giving her a chance to find someone who truly wants to be there. That's the story he tells himself. It makes the guilt more bearable. It gives him a way out that lets him look in the mirror and say, I did the right thing. Now, here's the part that stings. He might genuinely care about you. This isn't always about falling for someone else or you doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just that internal shift, that quiet voice that says, this isn't it. And when that voice gets louder, the gap between you grows. But because he still respects you, because he still sees your worth, he wants to believe that leaving is noble, that breaking your heart is somehow doing you a favor. And in a twisted way, it makes him feel like the hero, like he's saving you from a future of half love. The danger is, when someone frames the breakup as kindness, they rarely take full ownership of the pain they're causing. They might soften it with lines like, you deserve better, or I just want you to be happy. But underneath those words is a hard truth. He no longer wants to be the one making you happy. And instead of being direct, instead of saying, I'm not in this anymore, he cloaks it in concern for you. That can leave you spinning, wondering if you did something wrong, if he's just confused, if maybe there's still a chance. Because it doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like some tragic misunderstanding, but it's not. Let's be honest. Breaking up with someone takes courage. It requires the kind of honesty most people struggle with, especially when the other person hasn't done anything to deserve it. That's why so many people don't just leave, they slowly fade. They build distance. They become less loving until eventually the relationship crumbles on its own. It's easier to blame the breakup on circumstances than to look someone in the eye and say, I choose not to be here anymore. That's brutal. That's why he wraps it in a bow of kindness. It softens the blow for him, even if it doesn't for you. And when he tells himself this story, he might even believe it's the most loving thing he could do. Because part of him hopes that by stepping aside, he's giving you room to grow, to move on, to find someone better. But the truth is, it's not about you. It's about the weight he feels carrying a relationship he no longer has the strength to hold. He doesn't leave for you. He leaves to unburden himself. Now, this doesn't make him a bad person. We all go through seasons where our feelings shift. And sometimes they shift without warning or reason. It happens. But we have to call it what it is. A decision for himself, not a gift to you. Because here's what you deserve. Someone who doesn't have to convince themselves that staying is the right thing. Someone who chooses you fully without needing to justify their presence. You don't need someone to feel guilty enough to stay. You need someone who wants to stay. So when he says, I'm doing this for you, don't let that confuse you. Hear it for what it really is. I'm doing this for me, and I don't want to feel bad about it. And that's okay. He gets to make that decision. But you get to stop carrying the weight of someone else's self-justification. You get to stop spinning your mind in circles, trying to decode what went wrong when he's already written the ending in his head. His need to feel like a good person doesn't change the fact that he's walking away. And your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to stay. Let him go. Let him take his kindness and walk away with it. Because true kindness isn't about how gently someone exits your life. It's about how present they are when they're in it. When a guy's thinking about breaking up, one of the clearest signs, though often the hardest to admit, is that he simply stops investing. And I'm not talking about just grand gestures or romantic dates. I mean the small, everyday ways we show up for someone when we care. Those moments when he used to check in during your day, offer support during your rough patches, or just be present with you, those start to disappear, not abruptly, not dramatically, but slowly, subtly, like a dimmer switch turning down the light, little by little, until one day you realize you're sitting in the dark. It might start with delayed replies to messages. Then plans start falling through more often than they happen. He gets busy more than usual. And when he is around, he's not really there. The connection you once felt starts to feel distant, and you're left questioning whether it's in your head. But it's not. He's withdrawing his energy, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. You have to go not quite back to the same level of connection as you felt, but you find yourself relapsing. You can feel it. And that's not just because something changed between you. It's because he changed. When a guy wants to break up, he starts mentally checking out long before he actually says the words. He might still be in the room with you, still say love you out of habit, still go through the motions, but the heart isn't behind it anymore. Because what people often misunderstand is that breakups don't begin with the conversation. They begin with detachment, quiet, internal detachment. He starts thinking, is this really the relationship I want to be in? He starts evaluating the connection through a different lens, less about how good things are and more about whether he sees himself in this for the long haul. And here's where it gets painful. When he's mentally out the door, the effort disappears. Not because he wants to hurt you, but because his heart isn't compelling him to try anymore. When someone's invested, even if things get rocky, they're motivated to fix it. They want to show up. They want to understand what's going wrong. They want to bridge the distance. But once that drive is gone, it's like pulling teeth to get them to communicate, make plans, or show real interest in your life. You find yourself doing all the initiating, all the planning, all the emotional heavy lifting, and even then, it feels like it's not enough. That's not a coincidence. It's a signal, a very real, very painful one. You might even notice a shift in how he talks about the future. Plans you once dreamed up together, trips, moving in, starting something new, suddenly feel vague or off the table. He becomes non-committal. You bring up next month, and he responds with, let's see how things go. It's not just uncertainty, it's a lack of vision, because when someone is still in love and fully present, they want to picture a future with you. They naturally imagine it. They talk like someone who's not going anywhere. When that stops happening, you start to feel like you're dragging the relationship behind you, trying to get back to something that now only lives in your memory. And here's the tricky part. When he stops investing, it can be easy to internalize it. You start asking, what did I do wrong? Or why doesn't he care anymore? But most of the time, it's not about something you did. It's not even always about something missing in the relationship. Sometimes it's just about where he is emotionally. His own unresolved baggage, fears, doubts, things he might not even fully understand himself. But instead of communicating that, he just starts to retreat. And you know why that hurts so much? Because you remember how it used to be. You remember how hard he used to try, how deeply he once cared. And now, all that energy, all that attention, all that love, it's evaporating, slowly, quietly, without an explanation. And it makes you feel crazy, because you're reacting to something he's not saying, something he hasn't admitted yet, something even he might not have fully come to terms with. But your intuition is already reading it loud and clear. And it's in that gap between his silence and your growing awareness that the real pain festers. Because your heart wants answers, wants effort, wants something to change. And all you're getting is less time, less conversation, less presence, until one day you realize you're in a relationship with someone who's already halfway out the door. Here's what a lot of people don't realize when a guy is thinking about ending the relationship. Sometimes he doesn't just walk up to you and say, "Hey, I want to break up." It's not always that clean. In fact, one of the most telling and confusing behaviors is when he starts behaving in a way that almost forces you to be the one to end it. Not because he wants to hurt you, not even because he doesn't care, but because deep down, he's terrified of being the villain. There's a psychology behind this. Ending a relationship is emotionally expensive. It comes with guilt, shame, anxiety, and the fear of hurting someone who might still love you. So instead of stepping into that discomfort, some people try to sidestep it altogether. And that's when they start pulling these passive moves, not outright ending things, but withdrawing just enough to make the relationship uncomfortable, just enough to get you to do the hard part for them. So what does that look like? Well, suddenly he's less affectionate. Texts get shorter, responses slower, physical touch becomes rare, plans become vague. There's always a reason. He's too busy, too tired, or just not feeling it lately. And when you bring it up, when you say, "Is something wrong?" he might deny it. Or worse, he might say things that confuse you even more. "I don't know what I want," or "Maybe I just need space," or "It's not you, I'm just going through a lot." Now, here's the important part. He's not lying when he says those things. But what he is doing is pushing the discomfort of decision-making onto you. If he finally gets so frustrated that you say, "I can't do this anymore," he gets to walk away saying, "Well, she ended it. In his mind, he didn't break your heart, you did." It's a way of protecting himself from the pain of being the one who ends something, from being labeled the bad guy. You might even notice he starts picking fights over things that never used to matter. Suddenly, everything's a problem. You didn't text back fast enough. You were too quiet at dinner. You forgot something small, and now it's an issue. What's happening is he's creating emotional friction. He's building reasons, sometimes even subconsciously, to justify why this relationship isn't working. Because it's easier to leave when he can say, "Look, we were always fighting," and to just say, "I fell out of love." And let's talk about the guilt. That's what this is often rooted in. He doesn't want to hurt you. He may still care deeply. And that's what makes it so confusing, because there are still moments where he's kind or nostalgic or says something that gives you hope. And those moments make you think, maybe he's just going through something. You hold on, thinking it'll shift back. But the truth is, he's already halfway out. And those warm moments, they're not signs of commitment. They're signs of emotional conflict. Now, if you're on the receiving end of this, it's painful. It feels like you're being emotionally ghosted in slow motion. You keep showing up, trying to fix things, trying to get clarity, trying to reconnect. But it's like trying to hold on to smoke. And it can make you question yourself. You start thinking, am I asking for too much? Or did I do something wrong? Or worse, maybe I'm just not enough. But I want to be clear. This behavior isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his avoidance, his fear, his inability to take emotional responsibility. And the worst part, the more he hesitates to be honest, the more he drags you through uncertainty, the more damage is done to both of you. So what do you do in this situation? You step back and ask yourself one powerful question. Am I chasing clarity from someone who's already given me an answer with their behavior? Because when someone is consistently withdrawing, consistently creating distance, and consistently avoiding responsibility for where the relationship is going, that is your answer. You just have to be brave enough to trust what you see, not just what you hear. This is where your strength comes in. The strength to say, I deserve someone who chooses me with certainty, who leans in, not pulls away, who's willing to be honest even when it's hard. It's not about punishing him. It's not about making a dramatic exit. It's about reclaiming your peace and not waiting for someone to break up with you in slow motion. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be the one who sees the truth and walks away with dignity.